are listening to She Has No Limits, the podcast.
Once you're shown, you can't unsee. Time is short, you best believe in yourself. You're a formidable force driving, diving, lessons in the deep end. Let your ego drown, grow up or stay down. Break the chains, what remains of the day is yours to seize. If you're really, really ready like you need it to be.
She Has No Limits is a movement and community for professional women to come together, be inspired and learn how to design the limitless careers that we deserve. Absolutely delighted to welcome Clare Garner today, a hospitality industry entrepreneur and co-owner of La Greta restaurant in Valencia. This is a city where Clare has spent most of her adult life, firstly as a Spanish student in the 90s, and she returned again for good in the noughties after a brief stint in investment banking that took her from the UK to Luxembourg. So to the people who know her best, and Amanda is one of those people, Clare is a mistress of non-convention and authenticity, always choosing the path to become the best version of herself rather than a version that societal norms would have her choose. And I am very excited and intrigued to find out why Amanda has been so insistent that Clare should be a guest on She Has No Limits, the podcast. Clare, an enormous welcome. So Clare, as soon as you start speaking, it's going to be very crystal clear to our listeners that you grew up in another coastal city and Port of Valencia, where you live. Tell us why where you grew up has shaped your personality.
Yeah, I still haven't managed to lose my accent, even though I've now been here for I think it's about 23 years now. I think growing up in Liverpool, I mean, it's very stereotypical, isn't it? The whole, if you grow up in Liverpool, you're really sociable and you talk to anyone and everyone. But I think that's what's most shaped my personality from growing up there. Around 4 years ago, I took Lola, my wife, back to Liverpool, and it was a real eye-opener for her because it was the first time she'd actually spent, I think it was more than a week there, because before then we'd only been over for like a couple of days to see my mum. And she actually she actually had the time to spend around Liverpool city centre, in the pubs, in the karaoke bars, in the shops and restaurants and stuff, and meet my friends and, get into taxis and stuff. And she actually said to me, everyone's like you. She said, I didn't realise this before, but she said, I thought it was just you who, sparked up random conversations with strangers in the street. And she said, I've realised that you're just a product of your own environment. And I think it's true. I think growing up in Liverpool, we do talk to everyone. We do find it really easy to get on with people and just have conversations with people we don't know. And I think it's been a massive benefit to me professionally in all the different sectors that I've worked in. Just that ease with people. I don't have any problem at all. I've never had any problem at all speaking to people I don't know, speaking to a room full of people that I don't know, and just cracking on and getting on with people.
Which is an amazing gift to have that.
It is. My wife often says to me as well, I can't believe you just managed to have a 10-minute conversation with that person talking about nothing. It's a gift. It is a gift. And I think it makes people feel more at ease with themselves as well, because a lot of people don't have that. And when you start off in a new job, or you're training people up, or you're in you're project managing or whatever it is you're doing, it does put people at ease that you take that pressure off them to keep the conversation going and start the relation off. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I think I could definitely say that Liverpool is to blame for that part of my personality, definitely.
Let's talk about your love affair with Spain. How did it become home for you?
I don't think I ever actually made the conscious decision to live in Spain, not long term. I remember finishing university and most people were going down to London, getting proper jobs, had decided what sector of the industry they wanted to work in. And all I wanted to do was get back to Spain for a year and perfect my Spanish. And it was going to be a year. That was the plan. A year, maybe two. Get a job in a bar, maybe get a job teaching English just to tide me over and be able to pay the bills while I did that and while I decided what I actually wanted to do. And that turned into 24 years. I had a couple of breaks at the beginning due to personal reasons. I went back. I think I was over here for like 2 or 3 years teaching English. And then I went back and I worked in Manchester, and then I worked in Luxembourg for a year. And then but it was a 2.5 year break. And I came back to Spain. And I don't think I ever made a conscious decision, right, that's it, now I'm going to live here. I think it just happened. I think it just happens to a lot of people. I worked in Valencia Port for a while, for about 6 years, and then I basically fell into the hospitality industry. And now I'm 45. Obviously, I think I'm going to end up living in Spain. I can't see myself going back to the UK. I very much doubt it. I'd never say never, but I think I'm going to end up over here. I'm so happy over here now, and I do feel it took a while. I mean, obviously, I'm British, I'm English. But I feel a bit Spanish as well. I think I'm as Spanish as I could possibly get, having been born in Liverpool. I feel completely at home here. I love the Spanish. I love the way about them. I love their attitude. Obviously there are things that drive me mad as well about Spain and the Spanish, just as there are about the UK and the British. I don't think I could go back now. I'm too used to the weather, and I'm just too used to the easy way of life. I couldn't do it now. I'm too immersed in this culture, I think. I'm too used to having a siesta. I would find it so difficult not to have a siesta now. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I would just find it. I don't know if I'd be able to do it. I don't know if I'd be able to do a 9-to-5 job now in the UK. I don't think I'd be able to do it.
Can I ask you about, I guess the flip side of that belonging piece? So you've embraced Spanish culture. You've built a community around you. You've got that sense of belonging. How has it been over the years for the Spanish people around you to be accepting of you? Have you experienced any xenophobia?
People very, very close to me who were almost not aggressive, but definitely getting there about the whole Brexit thing. They took it really personally. They took it as a real, the UK doesn't want to be part of this anymore. The UK's racist. The UK, I think more than anything else, I think the general feeling was people in the UK think they are better than we are. That was the general feeling. And I can remember the day the Brexit vote was announced, the day they announced that we were leaving the European Union, which, by the way, was just such a shock to me because I just didn't think it was going to happen. At that point, I was working in another restaurant, and the people who were working with me said, and it was only half joking, "Why don't you all just fuck off now?" They were joking, but they weren't. They were like, "Why are you going to wait a year? Why don't you just leave now? What's the problem if you want to leave?" It really wasn't pleasant because I was getting it from people who were my friends, because they were personally offended by what the UK had voted for, and it was quite it was very raw for a few months. I was constantly trying not to get into arguments with clients of the bar who would sit at the bar and try and engage me in an argument about it. And I was constantly just saying, look, I don't want to talk about this. This has got nothing to do with me. I didn't even vote because I couldn't vote, because if you'd been out of the country for more than 15 years, you weren't allowed to vote. I was like, this has got nothing to do with me. It should be more than clear that I've dedicated my life to integrating myself into another European culture, you know. But for a few months, the attitude over here was quite aggressive, to be honest, towards the whole Brexit thing and towards the English, because they just took it personally. Ridiculously as well, because they shouldn't do. They shouldn't take it personally. At the end of the day, I mean, I was never one of those people who was hysterical about Brexit. I was shocked and I was very upset. I wish it hadn't happened, but I thought, well, it's going to happen. Essentially, it's a trade agreement. You know, we'll iron things out, and the social side of it will take care of itself, and that's up to the people of Europe to take care of, not the governments. You know, but that was a shock. That xenophobia at the beginning, when the Brexit vote was announced, that was a shock for me. Just made me uncomfortable. Like you'd meet new people, and they go, "Oh, you're English, are you?" And it'd be, they'd comment on it. They were offended.
How is it now, Claire?
They've sort of forgotten about it now, because it then turns into a laugh. because it turns into a laugh because negotiations went on for so long that it just turned into a complete joke. When Lola and I got married, they were like, "Oh, you're getting married so you can stay in the country, are you?" It just turned into a big joke then. Everyone's sort of calmed down about it now. It's not really mentioned anymore.
Which is good, isn't it? Because as you say, we can now invest in those social relationships and building good bonds now that we're over that shock.
Exactly, Catherine. I mean, I know it sounds that some people don't like me saying this, because there are a lot of people who want to continue being annoyed about it. But essentially, it's a trade agreement. It's up to the governments to sort out the financial side, and the social side, well, that's for the rest of us to deal with. The UK is in Europe geographically, whether you like it or not. And before the European Union existed, people travelled across Europe. People experienced the cultures, and that will continue to happen. It does make me sad. It makes me sad that it's happened. It shouldn't have happened, but it has happened. And we've got bigger fish to fry at the moment anyway, haven't we?
We most certainly have. Now, listen, Amanda knows, because of your very close relationship, that you have had a lovely varied career. So you've tried teaching, and then investment banking, and now you're in the hospitality industry. So completely diverse in terms of that career journey. What have you learned about yourself then as a result of these career phases that you've enjoyed?
Well, I think, as you said, it's very varied. I am very versatile. And all of these different sectors and careers that I've done, I never actually chose any of them. I really did fall into all of those careers. I was teaching English because I just needed to do something when I first came over to Spain. And it was the one thing that I was essentially qualified for, because I was English. Investment banking and stockbroking, I'd gone back to the Northwest because we had family issues. I was in Manchester, and I was actually employed to give out real-time stock prices over the phones by the company I ended up working for, because it was the dot-com boom. It was the year 99, 2000. And they were just inundated with calls and new clients. And so to take work off the actual brokers, they set up this call centre where people were giving prices out. And I was working with a temping agency because I just needed any job. And I started giving prices out, and it just kept booming. The dot-com thing just kept booming and kept booming. And after a couple of weeks, they spoke to me and they were like, "Have you got a degree?" And I was like, "Yeah." "How's your maths?" And I was like, "It's pretty good, actually." And they were like, "Okay, do you fancy studying for the LSE exam and start working properly?" And so I actually fell into that job. I'd never even considered a job in stockbroking or investment banking. And it was the same when I eventually moved back over to Spain in the year, I think it was probably 2002. I started working in Valencia Port. I fell into that as well. A very good friend of mine, and Amanda's, was working in import-export, and they needed somebody to manage their office in Valencia Port, and I was just offered the job. And I ended up working in hospitality because I got sick of working in import-export. I started asking myself questions about how I wanted to live my life. I didn't want to spend all day in front of a screen anymore. I didn't want an office job. It didn't suit me. I was bored stiff. And I jacked it all in and just started working at a restaurant at the weekends just to be able to pay my mortgage. And from then, I opened my own bar because the people I was working with wanted to open another restaurant. And they offered me the chance to go in as a partner. So I think what I've most learned about myself is that I'm really versatile. You can give me anything to do and I'll make the best of it.
And I would add to that optimistic versatility, because I think you personify the attitude of, yeah, I'll have a crack at that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll have a crack at anything. If you want to give me something to do, I'll do it. I don't mind what it is, especially if it's something new that I haven't done before. I do think and the UK is far more versatile with this than Spain is. Spain is they very much take into account the degree you have before they give you a job. And I think in the UK, I don't know if it's still the case, but certainly when I left university in the UK, They take into account the fact that you've got a degree. A degree is sort of a barometer for how well you can analyse and your academic capacity. I think most jobs, you can learn them on the job. There are obvious exceptions, all right, engineering, medicine. But I think a lot of other jobs, if you've got the right attitude and you want to crack on, I think you can.
Claire, there's something I wanted to take you back to when you were telling this story that you said, I woke up and decided I didn't want to live my life like this anymore. How do I want to live my life? And then you made some fantastic career choices, as in you jacked it all in and started again with, something that, one assumes you presume that you enjoyed doing. I was just pondering, there's a lot of people who are, like you, haven't really thought about their careers, head down, it's paying the mortgage, it's paying the bills, but quite often look up and think, I don't want to do this anymore. But they don't have, let me use that word, the bravery to change and to make that big decision. What is it, do you think, it about you that's enabled you to make that almost, no, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm going to do something else?
I think it depends on how much you can take. This is going to sound bizarre. There was a cartoon strip. I don't know if this cartoon strip is still going. It's called Dilbert. I don't know if it's still going. It's a US cartoon strip about a guy who worked in an office, and one of the main characters was his dog. He used to talk to him all the time and stuff. I think the head of human resources was a cat. And I remember going into work one day, and I've got this memory is so strong. It's bizarre. It's so bizarre, the things that make us change our minds or make us see things. But the cartoon strip was something like, Dilbert was getting ready for work. The dog said to him, today, you're going to put on clothes that you don't want to put on. You're going to go somewhere you don't want to go. And you're going to talk to people you don't want to talk to. Have a nice day. And I can remember reading it and thinking, Christ, that is bang on, isn't it? And I can remember thinking, that's today, tomorrow, the next day. And if I don't do something about it, it can so easily turn into 10 to 15 years. I didn't make the decision that day. I can remember thinking, oh God, I'm just not happy doing this. I was a bit bored as well. I was doing the same things every day. I was also falling into that thing in an office that a lot of people fall into. You're there for 8 hours. You're probably working for 4 of them, maybe 5. And the rest of the time you're just pretending to work, skiving about. And there comes a point where the only person that's doing any real damage to is you, because you're just bored. You're not giving your all. You're not giving your all because you realise that if you give 65, 70%, well, that's okay as well. No one's going to say anything to you. And I was, at the time, well, I still don't have any kids. I've never wanted kids. I'm quite happy to have nieces and nephews, as Amanda's fully aware. I just didn't think I had anything to lose because I thought I could walk out of this office job and just do something else, do something alternative. And if it doesn't work, there's always an office job to walk back to. Might take you a bit longer to walk back into it. But I think you've got to let go of that. I think a lot of people get very caught up with where they've got to at work. Oh, now I've got this car. I've got this title. I am important. You need to let go of that if you're not happy. I'm now in a situation where what I earn now per month, it's so much less than it has been in any other job, and I'm happier. And I think people get caught up and think it's going to be really difficult to walk away from their job, and it's not. And there will always be something to walk back to. There are thousands of jobs out there. If you are a person that is willing to work, a lot of people are. A lot of people don't want to put the graft in. But if you're conscientious and you're a person capable of initiative and doing a job, you can walk out of the job that you're doing now, try something else, and if it doesn't work, you can do something else. You can. It's not that difficult. You just need to do it. And not listen to other people either once you've made that decision. I mean, when I made the decision to walk out of the job I had in the port, there were people that just couldn't believe it. Especially in Spain, a lot of people, they don't have the same mobility within the labour market as we do. And once they've got what they call a fijo contract, which means that you're very difficult to sack once you've got a fijo contract. Once they've got that contract, they stay there, whether they're happy or not. And I just think, you spend more time in work than you do anywhere else. It's got to work for you. You can't be just turning up and not doing yourself any favours. I don't think it's a life plan.
Claire,
Yes.
you said to me before this interview that I could ask you anything. So
Correct.
I am going to move you on Chatterbox and ask you to tell us about your journey and your battle with addiction.
I think the experience that I've had with addiction is an experience that a lot of people have, but it's not one that's talked about. We've got a very stereotypical idea of what addiction is, which stems really from the 80s, the whole AIDS thing, the heroin thing, government posters, a junkie, off his tits in a gutter somewhere. We've got, it's not talked about, and it's seen as a lifestyle choice by a lot of people, and it's very cliched, our idea of what an addict is. That's not what addiction was for me, and that's not what addiction is for a lot of people. Addiction for me and for a lot of people is getting on with your life while it's happening. It's being in the bathroom on Christmas Day, taking drugs while your family are downstairs. It's going out at the weekend with your mates and having gear on you and no one else knowing about it. That's what addiction is. And people just get on with this and they don't question it because it's not talked about. And they think they can stop when they want. Just as an aside, because I wouldn't want to confuse anyone, just to make it clear what I think, the difference between, for example, what I would call habit and addiction, just in case anybody's listening to this, I don't want to worry anyone. A habit, I would say, is when due to actual circumstances, you are drinking too much or you are taking drugs. Like, for example, you're in university and you're with a circle of people who drink too much or take drugs. It's circumstantial. If you leave university and you stop, then it's a habit. Okay. If you're in a certain job and the people you're with do this and you do it too, but you then move city and it stops, then it's circumstantial and it's a habit. It's a drug habit or it's a drinking habit. And for me, dependency or addiction is when the backdrop doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter who you're with. You will find an excuse or you will find reasons for drinking or taking drugs. And I think part of the reason that it creeps up on people, as it did on me, is that you just mistake it for being overly sociable. And I know that sounds really trivial, but I was always out and about in my 20s. I was always out and about in my 30s. And, it was just everyone's doing it. I'm just doing it a little bit more. Then I opened a bar. How old was I when I opened a bar? Hang on a second. I think I was 32, 33 when I opened my first bar. And for the first 2 or 3 years, we were all drinking too much while the bar was open. We were taking drugs every so often. And it just went on and on and on. And then everyone else stopped. And everyone else stopped. And I couldn't. I didn't stop. And I thought, I can stop when I want. I'm doing it because I want to. And then it just got worse and worse and worse. And I realised, obviously, you go through that whole denial process, which is extremely painful. Probably the worst part of it, admitting to yourself that you've got a problem because of the stigma attached to drug addiction, which is a mental illness and should be talked about a lot more. And, for a while, it was quite a painful journey. Admitting to myself that I was a drug addict is a massive thing to admit. And then finding a way to stop was very painful as well. And yeah, I do have a very addictive personality. And from being in recovery There are things that I've noticed that I just never noticed before. Most of the people I met in recovery, it was rife in their family, and it's rife in my family. I think there are about I don't know exactly how many cousins we are because we don't all speak. I think there's probably about 20. There's 21, 22 cousins. I would say getting on for half have had addictions, and their parents, as in my parents and my aunts and uncles. It's a different generation. I wouldn't say any of them have had drug problems, but some of them have had alcohol problems and eating disorders as well. It's not talked about really how much it covers the whole addiction thing. It's basically obsessive compulsive disorder. It's compulsive behavior. It's not drinking a glass of red wine, it's consuming it. That for me is the difference. I can remember one of the first shots I had of stopping. I started going to see a psychologist, which by the way didn't work. But I was seeing her for about 5 or 6 months. And she said to me, I need you to find a hobby. I need you to find something to do, which wasn't really great advice. The hobby I found was I just started playing poker online, which is hilarious now, isn't it? Because it didn't occur to me that I shouldn't be doing that.
Oh my God.
Because the psychologist was treating drug addiction, not addiction as a global thing. This is because it's just not talked about. So a lot of the treatments available for addictions aren't what they should be. You're talking with people that have never, they've just never experienced it. They might not know anybody who's ever had an addiction. And I can remember I started playing poker online. And I can remember going back to her and she was like, what hobby have you picked up? And I said, poker. And I can remember her putting her head in her hands and just saying, I think you should avoid that one. But I was playing it online. I was making a bit of money. And then I remember going to Las Vegas with my mates, which Amanda was supposed to turn up for.
Oh, God.
Sorry, Amanda was supposed to turn up for the holiday, but didn't because she was pregnant. And I can remember being in a suited and booted at 6 o'clock in the morning in Caesar's Palace in Vegas in a poker tournament. And it's only now that I'm like, I can't believe a psychologist, gave me that advice to just go out and find a hobby without specifying what it could and couldn't be.
You haven't been suited and booted since you were in investment banking.
I tell you what, when we were in Vegas, Amanda, you weren't there, so you don't know. But we were actually dressing up quite a bit because we were in Vegas, No jeans for a couple of days. I was walking around in a suit.
Amazing. So Claire, what strategies and philosophies are serving you well then now that you've come through this journey and living your life and living with addiction? So for those that are listening, what has worked?
NA or AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. That worked for me. And that worked for me because I think the hardest part for me in the whole addiction process was admitting to myself that I was an addict, because I was there's just so much stigma and so much shame attached to it because it's not talked about. And I could not believe that I was an addict. It took me so long to admit that to myself. And when you do, you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is me. I can't believe this is how it's turned out. And it was such a relief turning up at a meeting. I've got my cousin to thank for that. I hit rock bottom and I spoke to my cousin who had problems as well. And he said, get yourself to a meeting, get yourself to an NA or AA meeting. And the relief walking in the door and realising that other people were having the same problems as I was having. Because when you're having those problems, because your immediate circle isn't having them, and it's just you, that's usually the case, you just feel so alone. You're suffering from a mental illness that you don't know how to deal with. And most other people, and I don't mean to be funny here, but most other people around you, they don't think you're suffering a mental illness. They just think you're a nutcase. They just think you are someone that they cannot rely on, that is going off the rails, that says they're going to do one thing and then does another. That's how they see you. And, not to apportion any blame on anyone here, it's because it's not talked about. So just that relief, that inherent relief when I walked in the door and I realized, God, there's 30 people in this room that have all done exactly the same thing I have. You listen to people's stories. It was just the fact that I didn't feel alone with it anymore that gave me the strength to get better. I saw, I got to know other people who had the same problem and got better. And I think that did it for me. Before that, I was talking to psychologists and talking to people who just had not had that experience, didn't know other people who'd had that experience. And I personally, I don't think those people are qualified to deal with it. I think you need to talk to people who've been through the same thing as you have. Sometimes I'm on social media with people that I know, and people are doing things and they're going out drinking, and I see all these warning signs in other people. Sometimes it's a bit disturbing because I see them and I'm like, oh God, that person should be asking themselves these questions. And they're not asking the questions because the information's not out there. It's a real shame. I do think it's something that we should talk about far more often. Even when I was in therapy, when I was going to NA and AA meetings, one of the reasons I stopped going to that organisation. This is quite personal, but one of the tenets of AA and NA is its anonymity. Obviously, Alcoholics Anonymous. You're encouraged not to talk about the fact that you're going to meetings with people who aren't addicts. And they say it's because you shouldn't be getting opinions from people who aren't addicts because it interferes with the process, etc. And they've got other reasons for it as well. You might have small children and it's not good for everybody to know about it. They've got a lot of reasons or excuses for why you shouldn't be talking about your addiction with the general public. And I can remember thinking, that is bullshit. That is total bollocks. We should be talking about this as often as possible with everyone. And if people are uncomfortable about it, then that's their issue, And it was one of the reasons I left.
Feels very Victorian not to talk about it, doesn't it? It's almost like hush, hush, don't talk about it.
Yeah, it's mad. And some of the reasons they give, I can see. There are people there who are, they're in there, they're teachers, they're policemen, they're doing jobs which maybe it's not such a great idea for people at work to find out. But I wasn't in that position, and I just thought, I've already been in one closet that I came out of. When I told people I was gay, I'm not going to stick myself in another cage. And especially just from a more social point of view, if anybody ever asks me about it, I might get asked by like 100, 200 people during the rest of my life. And if it just helps, if the information I give, if it helps one person to get better, then it will have been worth talking about it with 200 people. It definitely needs to be talked about, especially now there are people in lockdown just going mental, drinking in the PJs. I really do hope. I'm seeing it on social media and I'm thinking, I hope this is circumstantial. I hope everyone's going to be able to get out of it when they can, because it's a worry. The whole, I do. A lot of people have said to me, when did you realise, as part of the whole denial process and realise and admitting to yourself that you're an addict? People say to me, oh, I'm a bit worried about so-and-so. And I'll say, well, what's he doing or what's she doing? And they'll tell me about that person's drinking or that person's drugs. And I've always got the same two questions. Is that person doing it in secret? And is that person doing it socially? Okay. And they are the pointers. If you're doing it and you're lying about it, then that's a problem. And if it's stopped being sociable, if it's not a social activity, that's also a problem. So it's been a real worry for me this last year with lockdown, all these people who are not drinking socially anymore. It's not good. It's not good to not drink socially. Just at least just get yourself on a Zoom call and just do it that way.
One of the reasons that I wanted to get you on our podcast series, Claire, is because I see very few people who are enjoying a career with no limits. She has no limits. And I think by now, given everything we've covered, our listeners will start to see, will now be able to see what I see, which is that you have got to a stage in your career where you have no limits. Tell us what lies ahead. What do you have dreams beyond where you are, ambitions? Where do you want to get to?
You know what? If I've learned anything from, not just from my career and how versatile it's been, but definitely from the last year has been such an eye-opener for me. It's been negative in a lot of ways, and that the business has really suffered. We've lost a lot of money. But on a positive side, we've now got the opportunity to start from scratch again. We've got no staff. We had to let all the staff go. And I can remember a couple of weeks ago somebody saying to me, I bet you can't wait till the restaurant's back to normal. And I was like, yeah, I can't wait. And then I thought about it and I thought, hang on a second. I don't want it to be back to normal. I don't want to go back to how it was 2 years ago, where we were busy all the time. We were working really hard and we never ever stopped to think about, is this how we want the business to go? We were very much, the more people come in for dinner, the better. And this year's passed and we've gone right back to basics. I mean, we've for 6 months, 7 months of 2020, we were allowed to open the restaurant, but we were only allowed 30% capacity. And it was great. It was far more relaxed. We got to spend far more time with people. I think the service was better. I think the 5-year plan now really would be to find that sweet spot between working far too hard and bringing money in that we then end up paying in taxes, and earning enough money for it to actually be a business that works for everyone, not just us, but for the people who walk in as well. And long term, I don't really have any plans. I've learned not to make plans. I mentioned before that I earn less money now in the restaurant business than in any other business I've been in. I'm not ambitious on a money scale. I don't need to earn more. I think I've just got to the stage where I don't feel like I've got anything to prove anymore, to be honest. I'd just like to have as much free time as possible to go where I want and see the people that I like spending time with as much as possible. I just want an easy life, to be honest, Catherine. I just want a really easy life. I don't ask for anything else. I don't need to feel as if I'm pleasing anyone else. That's where we are. That's where I want to be.
I think it's a very enviable position to be, Claire.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you. That seems like an opportune place to press pause on a discussion which I feel could go on for some time. And just to say a huge thank you. Thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability. And we should talk more about addiction.
So it befalls to me this time to pick out some reflections. I have a lot. I think for me, I knew this in inviting Claire to be our guest, but I was really pleased that she highlighted this. Claire does not get caught up in any convention or any societal expectation. So she doesn't get caught up in status, material trappings, earnings. She has set herself free, and that has enabled her to have no limits, to have the career and the life of her choosing. So I think for me that's a key reflection. I loved the conversation around how she has created a sense of belonging for herself living in Spain, living abroad, and this more laid back life that suits her and that has enhanced her way of being in the world. Be more chill, be more Clare. We had a really important conversation about belonging in a post-Brexit Europe. And often as a British citizen, I am focused on thinking about the impact for me, my family, my community here in the UK, and we forget about those Brits abroad like Clare and what it's like for them living in an EU country post-Brexit. And Clare's wonderfully important and insightful conversation around addiction. And for me, again, I was really struck, given what we do for a living, Catherine, that we bring women together, build tribe, build community. She found that in Narcotics Anonymous, that she found others like her, that she realised she wasn't the only one who had had these addiction experiences. So the power of the tribe.
Yeah, so fantastic conversation with Clare. And I think my closing note would be, I agree, we need to talk about these things such as addiction and mental health and all those other things that have been in the past taboo subjects. We need to talk about them. We need to talk more. And so it was wonderful for her to feel able, willing and on a mission to talk about it more, and for us to share that with our listeners.
And if anybody is listening and they want to have more of a conversation about addiction, whether that's with us or with Clare, I know she would be only too happy. If her story helps one more person, she said, then she is happy. So please do get in touch. That's it for this episode. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. Please send us your feedback. And if you'd like to have a sneaky peek as to who's coming up, then go to shehasnolimits.com and check out our podcast page.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all again soon. Take care. All the best.